The wind cut at 22 below. I heard them before I saw them, wolves howling from 3 directions, my horse's ears pinned back. Something was wrong. The wagon wheels were still spinning when I reached it. Frozen canvas cracked like gunshots as I pulled it aside. 2 bodies in the snow, positioned all wrong. Not an accident. The axle had been cut clean through. Then I saw her hand. Blue mittens, death grip on a leather book. A child, maybe 7, eyes open but empty. She should have been dead. 3 days in this cold, the wolves circling, but her chest moved, shallow, barely. I wrapped her in my coat. Her fingers wouldn't let go of that book. "I'll be your father," I said. Wasn't asking, was promising. As I lifted her onto my horse, I saw them. Fresh tracks in the snow, 3 riders leading toward Helena, and on the ridge behind us, the wolf pack. 8 animals, watching, waiting. The girl whispered, "They're coming back for it." My ranch house had 12 rooms. I'd lived in 3 of them for 8 years. The rest just collected dust and memories I couldn't face. I carried her through the front door. She weighed nothing. My boots echoed on the pine floors. Too loud, too empty. I took her to the master bedroom, the one I hadn't slept in since Martha died, later on the bed that still smelled like lavender sachets gone stale. The fire was cold. I built it fast, my hands remembering the motions. Kindling, then split pine, then the big oak logs I'd been saving. Flames roared up the chimney. The room began to glow. She hadn't moved. Still clutching that book, her lips were blue. I heated milk on the stove, added honey from the jar Mrs. Hollis brought last Christmas. Never opened it. The smell, sweet and warm, filled the kitchen. When I knelt beside her with the cup, she flinched. "I won't hurt you," I said. Her eyes followed my hands, not trusting, just watching. I tried to take the book. She jerked awake, gasping. Her grip tightened. The leather was frozen to her mittens. "All right," I whispered. "Keep it. Just drink this." She took the cup in one hand, sipped, coughed, sipped again. Her other hand never let go of the book. Outside, my cattle lowed. Nervous, I knew that sound. Then the wolves started, howling from the barn, not hunting howls, killing howls. My foreman Cole's rifle cracked twice, 3 times. The cattle bellowed. The girl's eyes went wide. She grabbed my sleeve. "It's all right," I said. "Just wolves. Cole will handle it." But she wouldn't let go. Her fingers dug into my coat. When I tried to stand, she made a sound. Not words, just panic. I sat back down. More gunshots. The wolves kept howling. I heard Cole cursing, heard the cattle scattering. Every instinct said run out there, protect the herd. But this child was shaking so hard the bed frame rattled. I made my choice. Stayed. The wolves went silent after 20 minutes. The silence was worse. When her breathing finally slowed, when her fingers loosened on my coat, I laid her back, covered her with every blanket I owned. Her eyes closed. The book rested on her chest, rising and falling. I sat in the chair beside the bed, watched the fire, listened to her breathe. Cole came in at dawn, blood on his boots. His face said everything. 3 head, he muttered. Maybe more by morning. They weren't eating, boss, just killing. I've never seen wolves do that. The girl was asleep. I followed Cole to the kitchen, poured coffee that had been sitting since yesterday, tasted like tar, smelled like burnt oak. "Show me the book," Cole said. I'd pulled it from her grip while she slept, carefully. The leather was cracked, water-stained. Inside, neat handwriting in surveyor's ink, Thomas Cartwright, Territorial Land Auditor. I read it twice. Then I read it again. Section 14 to 22, Helena Land Office. Survey measurements exceed township legal boundaries by 847 acres. Commissioner Voss approving patents on land that doesn't exist. Impossible without deliberate fraud. Must report to territorial governor before spring patent deadline. March 15th, 1883. The dates, the measurements, the signatures. "Lord Almighty," Cole whispered. I flipped to the last page. A list of names. Men who'd questioned the surveys. 8 names. 7 had notes beside them. Deceased, horse accident. Deceased, wolf attack. Deceased, fall from cliff. Thomas Cartwright was the 8th name. No note yet. "Boss," Cole said. "Sheriff's coming up the drive. Got 2 men with him." Through the window, I saw them, federal badges glinting in the sunrise. I looked at the bedroom door. The girl was still asleep, still breathing. "How'd they know?" I asked. Cole shook his head. "Somebody wanted them here fast." I walked to the window, watched them dismount. Then I saw what Cole hadn't mentioned yet. The snow around the house, packed down in circles, wolf tracks, dozens of them. Not around the barn, around the house. They'd circled it 3 times during the night. Perfect rings, deliberate, like they were looking for something, not hunting cattle, hunting her. Sheriff Haynes knocked. 3 solid raps that meant business. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of horse sweat and gun oil. The sheriff stood on my porch with his hat in his hands. Behind him, 2 federal marshals, and beside them, a man in a wool coat too fine for ranch country. "Marcus," the sheriff said. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The man in the fine coat stepped forward, 45 maybe, clean-shaven, soft hands that had never held a branding iron. He smiled like a banker about to foreclose. "Marcus Thornhill," he said. "I'm Clayton Voss, land commissioner for this territory." The name from the field book. "I know who you are," I said. "Then you know why I'm here." He pulled a document from his coat. Heavy paper, federal seal. "The child you removed from that wagon site yesterday, she's a ward of the territory. Her father was a government employee. Until living relatives are identified, she falls under my jurisdiction. Her parents are dead. I buried them this morning." "Exactly. Which is why she needs to be processed through proper channels." He offered me the paper. "This is a custody writ. You'll bring her to the Helena Land Office tomorrow for registration and placement." I didn't take it. "She's 7 years old, half frozen, in shock. She doesn't need processing, she needs care." Voss's smile tightened. "Mr. Thornhill, I appreciate your humanitarian impulse, but the law is clear. The law can wait till she's warm." "The law doesn't wait," he nodded to the marshals. "I could have them remove her now, but I'm giving you the courtesy of bringing her in voluntarily, tomorrow, by noon." The sheriff finally looked at me. Something in his eyes, a warning, maybe, or an apology. Behind me, I heard a sound. Footsteps, small ones. Lily stood in the hallway, still wrapped in blankets, the field book pressed against her chest. She looked at Voss and went pale. Voss saw her. His expression changed for just a second, not anger, something else. Fear, maybe, or recognition. "Well," he said. "There she is. Hello, sweetheart. I'm Mr. Voss. I knew your father." Lily stepped behind me. Her hand found my coat. "Tomorrow, Mr. Thornhill." Voss put the document on the porch rail. "Or I'll send marshals." They mounted up. As they turned their horses, Voss looked at the wolf tracks in the snow, all around the house. His jaw tightened. "Strange about those wolves," he said. "Attacking ranches this size. You might want to deal with that problem before you lose more stock." He rode away. The sheriff lingered. "Marcus," he said quietly, "be careful. Voss has reach. Federal reach." "I know what he has," I said. The sheriff nodded once, then followed the others. I looked down. Lily was still holding my coat. "He's a bad man," she whispered. First full sentence she'd spoken. "I know," I said. Sunday. The courthouse was closed, but the cattle auction ran anyway. I needed to sell 50 head to pay for an attorney. Cole had loaded them before dawn. We took the north road to Helena, passed through my south pasture on the way. I saw them from half a mile out, dark shapes in the snow, too still. "Wait here," I told Cole. Lily was sitting between us on the wagon bench. I walked out to the shapes. 8 head, throats torn, bodies barely touched. The wolves hadn't eaten, just killed. That made 15 dead in 2 days. I stood there in the cold, looking at the waste. $1,500 in losses, maybe more. The smell of blood and exposed organs made my stomach turn. Crows were already circling. When I got back to the wagon, Cole's face was grim. "Boss." "I know, keep moving." The Helena auction yard smelled like manure and tobacco. 200 men, maybe more. Every rancher in the valley came to Sunday sales. The auctioneer's voice echoed off the barn walls, rapid-fire numbers I'd heard 1,000 times. I led my 50 head into the holding pen. Good cattle, should have brought $18 a head. I was walking back to register them when I heard it. A voice, loud enough to carry. "That's him, the man who took the Cartwright girl." The crowd noise dropped, heads turned. Clayton Voss stood on the auction platform, beside the auctioneer, like he belonged there. "Marcus Thornhill," Voss called out. "I gave you until tomorrow, but since you're here, let's discuss this publicly. That child," he pointed at Lily, standing beside Cole, "is territorial property. Her parents died in possession of government documents. Documents Mr. Thornhill is now withholding from federal authorities." The crowd murmured. I felt eyes on me. "She's not property," I said. "She's a child. A child whose father stole land office records before his death. A child you removed from a death scene without notifying proper authorities. Tell me, Marcus, What exactly are you after? The Cartwright land deed? Section 18, mineral rights included? Worth $30,000? The crowd noise rose. I heard whispers. Land grabber. Always knew Thornhill was greedy. My face burned. I'm not after anything, but... And you've lost 15 head to wolves in 2 days. Voss's voice cut through mine. Can't even protect your own livestock. How do you propose to care for a traumatized child? Someone laughed. Then another. I looked at the crowd. At men I'd known for 20 years. Hiram Burke, who'd taught me how to read cattle. He was looking away. Wouldn't meet my eyes. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Mr. Thornhill, your cattle? Bidding's suspended, Voss said, until this matter is resolved. Lily's hand found mine. Her fingers were shaking. She looked up at me, then at Voss. He killed them, she whispered. But the auction yard was quieting down. People were listening. Her whisper carried. I heard his voice, she said, louder now. That night, by the wagon, he said, make it look like an accident, and then... Her voice broke. And then he said, the wolves will finish it by morning. The crowd went silent. Voss's face hardened. The child is clearly confused, traumatized. She needs professional evaluation, not this man's interference. But I'd seen it, just for a second, when Lily spoke. He'd looked afraid. She came at midnight. 3 sharp knocks on the door. I had my rifle up before I was fully awake. Marcus Thornhill? A woman's voice. It's Ruth Brennan, Joshua's widow. I knew the name, surveyor, died 3 years back. Horse accident, they'd said. I opened the door. She stood on my porch in riding clothes, breath steaming in the cold. Behind her, a horse tied to my rail. No saddle escort. She'd ridden 8 miles alone in the dark. Ma'am, I said. It's past... I know what time it is. She pushed past me into the house. Snow melted off her boots onto my floor. She smelled like horse sweat and urgency. She was carrying a leather tube, the kind surveyors use for maps. I heard what happened at the auction, she said, what the girl said about Voss, about wolves. She set the tube on my dining table and unscrewed the cap. You need to see these. She spread out 3 large sheets, hand-drawn survey maps, section lines, boundary markers, elevation notes, all in careful ink dated 1878. My Joshua measured these sections himself, Ruth said. Her finger traced the lines. Section 4 through 22. Every boundary stone, every creek ford, every tree marker. This is what the land actually looks like. She pulled out a second set of maps. Official ones, stamped with the land office seal. Same sections, different boundaries. Now look at these. The current land office records, see the difference? I did. The property lines didn't match. Whole parcels shifted. Hundreds of acres moved from one claim to another. These official maps, Ruth said, show land that doesn't exist. Boundaries that can't be real. Joshua was going to report it to the territorial governor. What happened to him? Her jaw tightened. They said his horse spooked. Wolves came out of nowhere, middle of the day. Horse threw him. He broke his neck on the rocks. She looked at me. But Joshua's horse was trained for wolf country. Worked surveying for 20 years. Never spooked. Not once. The fire popped. Sparks climbed the chimney. There are others, she said. 3 men besides Joshua who questioned survey discrepancies. All dead within months. Wolf attacks, spooked horses. One fell off a cliff trying to escape wolves. She pointed at my table. In that field book your girl has, Thomas Cartwright was documenting the same fraud Joshua found. I walked to the window, looked out at the darkness. Why now? Why come to me? Because you have proof Joshua didn't, that field book, and you have a witness, a child who heard Voss give the order. She rolled up her maps. And because if you don't fight, they'll kill her too, just like they killed her parents, just like they killed my husband. What do you want me to do? Check your deed, she said. If Voss altered the township surveys, every ranch patent in this valley might be fraudulent, including yours. The words hit like a fist. My deed's clean. Bought this land in '76, paid in gold. From who? I thought back. Probate sale. Previous owner had died sudden. Widow sold cheap, moved east. Man named Garrett, Ephraim Garrett. Ruth's face went pale. Ephraim Garrett died in 1876. Wolf attack, they said. His widow got nothing. The deed went to proper heirs through the land office, which means it went through Voss's father, Preston Voss. He was commissioner then. My chest tightened. Check your deed, Marcus. I'll bet money the signatures don't match. She left the way she came. Fast. Silent. The smell of horse and cold lingered after she was gone. I didn't sleep. Benjamin Cross had the only law office within 50 miles that wasn't afraid of the land office. I found him Monday morning, brought Lily with me. Cole stayed with the herd. Cross was 60, built like a fence post, with ink stains on every finger. His office smelled like old paper and pipe tobacco. Books lined every wall. He read through Ruth's maps, read Thomas Cartwright's field book, read Voss's custody writ. "You can petition for emergency guardianship, yeah," he said, "based on rescue and current care. Hearing would be in 6 days." He looked at Lily. She sat in the corner, still clutching the book. "Problem is, Voss has federal standing, you don't. Blood relations trump good intentions." "She doesn't have blood relations. They're dead." "Voss is claiming wardship through his office. Federal authority beats county sentiment." "What do I need?" "Character witnesses, proof the child's welfare is better served with you than in territorial custody." He paused. "And if her testimony implicates Voss in her parents' death, he'll use every legal tool to suppress it. Federal charges require federal proof." Sheriff Haynes walked in without knocking. He looked tired. "Marcus?" He nodded. Then to Cross, "Can I speak with your client, privately?" Cross gestured to the back room. I followed the sheriff. He closed the door. The sound of the latch clicking echoed in the small space. "Off the record," he said quietly. "I checked wolf incident reports. 8 deaths in 2 years, all near disputed survey sites. All victims had filed boundary complaints with the land office." He pulled out a folded paper. "No one's investigating because wolves are wolves, but the pattern's there, if you look." "You believe the girl?" "I believe something's wrong, whether it's criminal conspiracy or just bad coincidence." He shook his head. "I can't prove it either way, but I wanted you to know you're not crazy for wondering." We went back to the main office. Cross was writing notes. "One more thing," Cross said. "Voss filed a counterclaim this morning. He's alleging you're after the Cartwright land deed. Says Thomas Cartwright owned Section 18, mineral rights included, assessed value of $30,000. I don't want his land. Doesn't matter what you want. Voss is building a narrative. Greedy rancher exploits orphan for mineral rights." Cross looked at me. "He's setting up motive for a jury." The door opened. Cole came in, hat in hand, face grim. "Boss, they found old man Hendricks, dead. Wolves got him in the north timber." My blood went cold. "Hendricks?" "He was checking his boundary markers last week, said they'd been moved, was going to report it." Sheriff Haynes stood up fast. "When?" "This morning. Body was still warm." The room went silent. Lily looked at me. Her voice was small. "They're killing anyone who knows." The church was packed. Every pew full, standing room only along the back wall. Reverend Mills had called an emergency town meeting after Hendricks's body was found. The whole valley showed up. I walked in with Lily. The talking stopped. Eyes followed us to a pew near the front. No one sat near us. The bench stayed empty on both sides. The church smelled like wet wool and nervous sweat. Outside, freezing rain tapped against the windows. Someone coughed. The sound echoed in the silence. Reverend Mills stood at the pulpit. "We're here to discuss the, situation with young Lily Cartwright and the recent deaths." Clayton Voss stood from the front pew. He had papers in his hand, official-looking, with seals and ribbons. "Reverend, with your permission." He turned to face the crowd. "I've brought documentation. Thomas Cartwright's last will and testament, registered with the territorial clerk 3 months ago." He held up the paper so everyone could see the seal. In it, Thomas Cartwright designated his land holdings, Section 18, including mineral rights valued at $30,000, to pass to rightful heirs under territorial law. He looked at me. "Not to be seized by opportunists exploiting his orphaned daughter." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I didn't take that child for land," I said. "No?" Voss's voice was smooth, reasonable. "Then explain why you removed her from the death scene before authorities could secure government documents. Explain why you're refusing to surrender her to proper custody. Explain," his voice rose, "why a man who can't even protect his own herd thinks he can raise a traumatized child." "My cattle, 23 head dead in 4 days, Marcus. The wolves smell weakness. They smell a man distracted, playing father while his ranch falls apart. What happens when they come for the child?" Fear rippled through the crowd. I saw mothers pull their children closer. A shopkeeper stood. A man named Vernon ran the dry goods store. Marcus, you've always been ambitious, always acquiring land. How do we know this isn't just, I'm not after land, I said. I'm trying to protect a child. From what? A woman called out. Mrs. Patterson, Hendricks's daughter. My father's dead, killed by wolves yesterday. You're saying that's not natural. You're saying someone's controlling them. Her voice cracked. That's crazy talk, Marcus. I'm saying there's a pattern. Pattern? Voss cut in. The pattern is winter desperation. Wolves coming down from the high country because game is scarce. It happens every hard winter. Always has. He looked at the crowd. What Marcus is suggesting, that someone is orchestrating wolf attacks, is not just absurd. It's dangerous. It spreads panic when we need rational response. Hiram Burke stood, my old mentor, the man who'd taught me everything about ranching. He looked at me for a long moment, then he looked away. I think, he said slowly, Marcus should step back from this situation. Let the proper authorities handle it, before anyone else gets hurt. The words hit like a gut punch. Other voices joined in, reasonable voices, concerned voices, voices I'd known for 20 years. He's not thinking clearly. Lost his family, never recovered. Now he's projecting onto this girl. Someone's going to get killed. Reverend Mills raised his hand for silence. Marcus, perhaps it would be best if you and the child stepped outside until legal matters are resolved. I stood. Lily's hand was in mine. We walked toward the door, every eye on us. No one spoke, just watched us leave. As we reached the porch, I heard it, howling, not distant, close, from 3 directions at once. The churchgoers heard it too. The talking stopped. Women gasped. Men reached for rifles they'd left at home. Wolves, closer to town than they'd ever been recorded. Through the church window, I saw Voss. Just for a second, he was smiling. We rode back in silence. Lily sat in front of me on the saddle, wrapped in my coat. The freezing rain had turned to sleet. It stung like needles. When we reached the ranch, Ruth Brennan's horse was tied at my rail again. She was in my study, standing by the cold fireplace, waiting. Show me your deed, she said. I wanted to refuse, wanted to prove her wrong, but something in her face stopped me. I walked to the safe. The combination hadn't changed in 20 years. 3 right, 15 left, 41 right. The tumblers clicked. The heavy door swung open. Inside, cash for payroll, banknotes, my wife's jewelry, and the deed. Heavy paper, official seal, filed in 76, Marcus Thornhill. 15,000 acres, Township 14, Range 8. Commissioner Preston Voss presiding. I handed it to Ruth. She took it to the window, held it up to the lamplight. Her face went pale. Marcus, she whispered. This signature, right here. Preston Voss's signature. She pulled out her husband's death certificate, held it next to my deed. The signatures matched. Exact. Same loops, same pressure, same flourish on the final letter. Forged, she said. Just like Joshua's death certificate, just like the altered survey plats, they used the same forger for everything. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. You don't own this land, Ruth said. Never did. Your deed is fraudulent. The room tilted. 20 years. Every fence post, every branded calf, every drought survived. Every winter endured, built on a lie. I sank into the chair. The leather creaked. The sound seemed far away. How many others? I managed. The whole valley, maybe the whole territory. Footsteps pounded on the porch. Cole burst through the door, wild-eyed, blood on his hands. Boss, the wolves, North herd, you need to come now. I followed him outside. Ruth came too. The moon was rising, full and bright. It painted the snow silver and red, 40 head, maybe more. We scattered across the pasture, throats torn, bodies barely touched. Just killed, not eaten. The smell of blood and exposed viscera made me gag. This wasn't hunting. This was slaughter. Cole stood beside me. They didn't even feed, boss, just killed and moved on. I've never seen wolves do this. Never. I knelt in the snow, touched the blood, still warm, fresh. Around us, the tracks, dozens of them. Wolf prints, all the same size, too uniform, too organized. These weren't wild animals following instinct. These were soldiers following orders. I stood, looked at the carnage, at my herd, at my fortune bleeding out onto snow on land I'd never legally owned. Everything was a lie. Behind me, the door opened. Small footsteps. Lily stood on the porch in her nightgown, pale in the moonlight. Papa said Mr. Voss keeps wolves, she whispered. In a canyon, Section 22. He feeds them so they'll follow commands. Ruth grabbed my arm. Section 22. That's on Joshua's original maps. But it's not on the current ones. That canyon. She looked at me. It doesn't officially exist anymore. The whole section was redrawn, hidden. I stood there, blood on my hands, forged deed in my pocket, 40 dead cattle at my feet. How many others? I asked again. Ruth's voice was quiet. Everyone, Marcus. Everyone who matters. If Voss has been doing this since his father's time, 30 years of fraudulent deeds, then every major ranch in this territory is built on stolen land. The wind picked up, carried the smell of death, and in the distance wolves howled, not hunting, celebrating. I rode out at dawn, didn't tell Cole where I was going, didn't tell Ruth, just saddled up and left. The cemetery sat on a hill 2 miles east. Small plot. 15 graves, maybe. Most of them forgotten. But I knew where mine were. I'd walked to them 1,000 times in my mind. The ground was thawing, not much, but enough that my boots sank into mud instead of breaking through ice. Water trickled down the hillside. The snow was melting, spring coming, whether I was ready or not. 2 headstones, side by side. Simple granite, no fancy words. Martha Thornhill, 1848 to 1875, beloved wife. James Thornhill, born and died March 14, 1875. I knelt between them. The stone was warming in the sun. I put my hand on Martha's marker, felt the heat seeping through granite. I built an empire on stolen land, I said. Everything I thought I earned, it's lies. I couldn't save you, and now I can't even claim I made something good from the grief. A crow called from the pine tree. The sound echoed across empty hills. But that child, I said. She's the first thing in 8 years that feels true, and they're going to take her. The law says she's not mine. The deed says this ranch isn't mine. Nothing's mine. I'm just a man with empty hands and a forged piece of paper. The wind shifted, brought the smell of pine and wet earth. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I said. Smart enough? What if I lose her, like I lost you? The graves didn't answer. I sat there until my knees ached, until the sun climbed high enough to warm my back. Then I heard it. A rustle in the brush. I turned. The wolf sat 30 yards away, lead male, same one from the wagon site, gray muzzle, scarred ear, watching me. I stood slowly. My rifle was on the saddle. I could reach it. Had a clean shot. The wolf didn't move. I walked to my horse, drew the Winchester, felt the cold metal in my hands, raised it. The wolf tilted its head, ears up, not afraid, just waiting. My finger rested on the trigger. This animal had killed my cattle, had circled my house, hunting for Lily. One shot, problem solved. But I looked at those yellow eyes and realized something. This wolf was doing what it was trained to do, fed, conditioned, made into a weapon. It wasn't the enemy. I lowered the rifle. You're just a tool, I said. Same as that forged deed, same as those fake maps. Someone made you into something you weren't. The wolf stood, shook itself, took 3 steps back. I could still shoot, still had time. I won't hunt you, I said. I'll hunt the man who made you into this. The wolf turned, loped away through the trees, disappeared into shadows. I stood there with the rifle in my hands, felt something break open inside me, something that had been locked tight for 8 years. I took off my gold signet ring, the one I'd worn since the day I bought this ranch, symbol of everything I'd built, everything I thought I was. I put it in my pocket. No more hiding behind money, I said to the graves. No more blaming the wrong enemy. I rode back toward the ranch, but halfway there, I turned south, toward town. They were waiting at Cross's office when I arrived. Ruth, the attorney, and 3 others I hadn't expected. Hiram Burke sat by the window, wouldn't look at me as I walked in. Sheriff Haynes stood by the door, arms crossed, and a third man, tall, maybe 40, dark hair worn long, Blackfoot features, expensive suit. Marcus Thornhill, Cross said. This is Samuel Graywolf, attorney from Washington Territory. Graywolf stood, shook my hand. His grip was firm. He smelled like saddle leather and pipe tobacco. Mr. Burke contacted me yesterday, Graywolf said. His voice was educated. Eastern schooling. Told me about your situation, about the survey fraud, about the wolves. Hiram finally looked at me. I'm sorry, Marcus. About yesterday. At the church. But I couldn't let them know I was helping until I had made contact with the right people. I've been tracking land fraud cases for 3 years, Graywolf said. Railroad expansion, forced relocations, treaty violations. The pattern's always the same. Forge the surveys, alter the deeds, eliminate anyone who questions it. He spread out a map on Cross's desk. And in every case, the fraud involves the same thing, making land disappear from official records. Sheriff Haynes stepped forward. I found something. Talked to old Red Hawk, the trapper. He says there's a canyon on Section 22. Says he's heard wolves howling from there year-round, even summer. Wolves don't den in summer, Ruth said. Not unless they're being fed, Grey Wolf finished. Kept, trained. He looked at me. If someone's maintaining a wolf pack, feeding them, conditioning them to attack on command, that canyon is evidence. Physical evidence Voss can't forge or burn. Section 22, I said. Lily mentioned that, said Voss keeps them there. Cross pulled out the current land office maps. Problem is, Section 22 doesn't exist anymore. According to official records, that entire section was resurveyed in 1880. The canyon was corrected out of existence. But it's on Joshua's original maps, Ruth said, the real ones. Which means if we can find that canyon, find the wolf den, we have proof of both conspiracies, Grey Wolf said. The survey fraud and the murders. There's risk, Cross said. If we go public now, Voss destroys every document in the land office before we can stop him. We need the physical evidence first. Sheriff Haynes nodded. I can't officially help. Not yet. But unofficially? That canyon's on tribal treaty land according to the old boundaries, which means I have standing to investigate, Grey Wolf finished. As tribal legal counsel. He looked at me. And I filed federal suit this morning. Treaty violation. Judge Warren Pike agreed to consolidate all claims. Yours, mine, Ruth's, one territorial hearing. Pike's honest, the sheriff said. But he's under pressure. Political pressure. You'll have one shot at this. Grey Wolf rolled up his maps. Then we'd better make it count. We find that canyon, we document everything, and we bring this to court before Voss knows what's coming. Hiram Burke stood. I checked my deed last night. It's forged too. Same signature Ruth found, which means half the ranchers in this valley are sitting on fraudulent claims. He looked at me. If we're going down, Marcus, we're going down together, but we're taking Voss with us. Outside, rain began to fall. Cold spring rain. The sound on the tin roof was like distant drums. Ezra Tompkins had been my banker for 18 years, loaned me the money to buy my first 100 head, shook my hand at Martha's funeral, never missed a payment, never questioned my word. Until now. His office smelled like ink and old paper. Dust motes floated in the lamplight. He sat behind his desk with my loan documents spread out in front of him, wouldn't meet my eyes. Marcus, he said, I'm calling in your operating loan, full payment, by Friday. The words hit like a physical blow. Ezra, that's $8,000. I don't have liquid cash in April. You know that. No rancher does before the spring sale. I know. His voice was quiet, apologetic. But your situation? What situation? He finally looked at me. You've lost 63 head to wolves in 2 weeks. That's $1,500 in losses. Lloyd's of London won't cover it. They classify it as failure to protect livestock. Your insurance is void. The wolves, and there are questions about your deed, about several deeds in the valley. I can't carry paper on assets that might not be legally valid. He pushed the documents toward me. I'm sorry, Marcus, but I have investors. I have responsibilities. 18 years, Ezra. I've never missed a payment. I know, but things change. He stood. I need the money by Friday, or I foreclose on your remaining herd. I walked out into the rain. Cold drops mixed with warmer air. The smell of mud and horse manure filled the street. Spring was coming, but all I felt was winter. Cole was waiting at the wagon. How bad? Bad. I climbed up beside him. Get word to the cattle buyers. We're selling everything. 500 head. Today. Boss, I know what it is. We drove to the auction yard. Same place Voss had humiliated me a week ago. Same auctioneer, same crowd. But this time, I wasn't selling prime stock at fair price. This was a distress sale. Everyone knew it. The bidding was brutal. Cattle that should have brought $20 a head went for $14, $12 for the older stock, $10 for the calves. I stood there and watched my herd sell at panic prices, watched $12,000 in value vanish. Men I'd done business with for years bought at discount and wouldn't meet my eyes. Clayton Voss stood at the back, bought 100 head, paid rock-bottom prices. When our eyes met, he smiled. Hate to profit from a neighbor's misfortune, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. but business is business. The crowd laughed. Not mean laughter, just dismissive, like I was already gone. I took the cash to the bank, paid Ezra, walked out with $800 to my name. Everything else, the house, the land, the remaining cattle, mortgaged or fraudulent, or both. Rain soaked through my coat as I walked back to the wagon, the smell of wet wool mixed with the copper taste of failure. "Boss," Cole said quietly, "we're not done yet. Feels done. It ain't." The creek was flooding by the time we got back to the ranch. Early April thaw, snow melting fast in the high country, water ran brown and angry through the valley. Cole and I were moving the remaining cattle to high ground when we saw him. A rider coming up the North Trail, the same Blackfoot attorney from Cross's office, Samuel Gray Wolf. He dismounted at the barn. Mud splashed up his expensive trousers. He didn't seem to notice. "The creek's exposed something," he said. "You need to see this." We followed him to the wagon site, the place where I'd found Lily 3 weeks ago. The snow was almost gone now, just patches in the shadows. The creek had jumped its banks, carved new channels through the mud. And there, half buried in silt, a wagon wheel, not from the Cartwright wagon. That wreckage was 50 yards uphill. This was different, older, different maker's mark on the hub. Gray Wolf knelt beside it. "2 wagons," he said, just like the girl said, one to carry the Cartwrights, one to follow, to make sure they didn't survive. Cole dug around the wheel with his hands, found traces of rope, kerosene stains on the wood. "They doused it and burned it after," Cole said. "Tried to hide the evidence. But the flood doesn't lie," Gray Wolf finished. Sheriff Haynes rode up. He'd been watching from the road. Now he dismounted, examined the wheel himself. The smell of wet earth and old smoke clung to everything. "This is evidence," he said. "Physical evidence of a second wagon at the scene. Means this wasn't an accident. Means—" A sound cut through the air, high-pitched, mechanical. We all froze. Lily stood at the top of the ridge. She'd followed us from the ranch. Her hand was at her mouth, eyes wide. "That sound," she whispered. "That's what I heard, before Papa's wagon crashed." Gray Wolf pulled something from his saddlebag. A brass whistle. 3 chambers, the kind trainers use for dogs. He blew it. 3 short bursts from the hills, in answer, howling. 4 wolves, close. "Jesus," Cole breathed. "They're still responding to the signal," Gray Wolf said, "which means they're still conditioned, still following commands." He looked at the sheriff. "Ready to find that canyon?" We rode northwest, following Joshua Brennan's original maps, the ones Ruth had given me. Section 22 didn't exist on current surveys, but it was right there on the old ones. Clear as day. The canyon was hidden. You'd ride past it 100 times and never see it. The entrance was narrow, maybe 10 feet wide. Looked like just another rock face, but once you were through the gap, it opened up, 30 feet wide, 100 yards deep. The smell hit us first. Urine, old bones, rotting meat, animal musk so thick it made my eyes water. Then we saw them, the structures, feeding troughs, long wooden boxes crusted with dried blood and fat, chain stakes driven into the ground, worn paths where animals had paced, and collars. Leather collars hanging from a rail, like harnesses in a stable. Gray Wolf dismounted, picked up one of the collars, examined the brass tag riveted to it. "VR," he read. "Valley Ranch, Preston Voss's old property. There were 12 collars, but only 8 showed recent wear. 4 are missing," Cole said. Sheriff Haynes walked the perimeter, found whistle marks on the rock face, training signals carved deep, found a lean-to shelter with supplies, rope, torches, a ledger. He opened it, read aloud. "Feeding schedule, training protocol, attack commands." He looked up. "This is how they did it. Kept wolves here, fed them, trained them to attack on signal, then blamed nature when people died." The creek rushed past the canyon mouth. The sound echoed off the stone. I counted the collars again. 8 present, 4 missing. "The ones that killed my cattle," I said. "The ones still out there." "Still dangerous," Gray Wolf said, "until someone stops feeding them. Until someone breaks the conditioning." He pulled out a camera. "But this is proof. Physical proof of conspiracy. Voss can't forge this, can't burn it. It exists." He started photographing the collars, the feeding troughs, the whistle marks, every detail. Lily appeared at the canyon entrance. She'd followed us again. Stubborn child, she looked at the collars, at the training equipment. Her face went pale. "Papa knew about this," she whispered. He found it. That's why they killed him. Because he knew where the wolves lived. Grey Wolf knelt beside her. Can you testify to that? In court? She nodded, small, determined. Then we have what we need, he said. He looked at me, at the sheriff, at Cole. I filed federal suit this morning. Judge Pike consolidated all claims. Yours, mine, Ruth's, one hearing, one chance. He packed his camera. But Marcus? We counted the tracks. 8 wolves in this den, 4 at large. Voss might be preparing another accident. You need to be careful. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The spring storm was building. We rode back in silence. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than despair. I felt like we had a chance. I called the meeting myself, sent word through Cole. Every rancher, every shopkeeper, every family in the valley. Thursday night, church, come hear the truth. Reverend Mills didn't want to let me in, stood at the door with his arms crossed. Marcus, after last time, another man died, Hendricks, and before him, 8 others, all questioning surveys, all killed by wolves that aren't wild. I looked at him. You can bar the door, Reverend, but these people deserve to hear what's happening before anyone else dies. He stepped aside. The church filled slowly. Suspicious faces, angry faces, families that had known me for 20 years, now looking at me like a stranger. The pews creaked under weight. The smell of damp wool and lamp oil filled the space. Outside, thunder rumbled. Spring storm building. I stood at the front. Lily sat in the first pew beside Ruth. Grey Wolf stood against the wall. Sheriff Haynes near the door. Hiram Burke in the back. Clayton Voss wasn't there. Smart man, knew what was coming. I waited until everyone settled, until the murmuring stopped, until I could hear my own heartbeat over the rain on the roof. I came here to defend myself, I said. But I can't. Silence. Ruth Brennan showed me proof. My deed, the document I've built 20 years on, is forged. The signature's fake. The land patent's fraudulent. I don't own this ranch, never did. Gasps, whispers. Someone stood to leave. Sit down, I said, because it's not just me. I pulled out Ruth's comparison documents, held them up. Joshua Brennan's original surveys, from 1878, compared to current land office records, they don't match. Hundreds of acres shifted, boundaries that can't exist, land that appears and disappears on paper. Someone started. It's fraud, I said. Systematic fraud, going back 30 years. Preston Voss started it, Clayton Voss continued it, and everyone who's bought land in this valley since 1875, you're sitting on stolen ground. The room erupted, voices shouting, men standing, women crying. You're lying, someone yelled. I wish I was. I looked at them, at faces I knew. Check your deeds. Look at the signatures. Compare them to Joshua Brennan's death certificate. To Ephraim Garrett's will. They're all the same. All forged by the same hand. Hiram Burke stood. I checked mine last night. Marcus is telling the truth. My deed's fraudulent. Preston Voss's signature is forged. Another rancher stood. Then another. 5 men, all confirming the same thing. The room went quiet. And the wolves, I said. They're not random, not natural. Sheriff Haynes found a canyon, section 22. Doesn't exist on current maps, but it's on the old ones. Inside that canyon, feeding troughs, training equipment, 12 wolf collars with Valley Ranch markings, Preston Voss's old brand. Mrs. Patterson stood, Hendricks's daughter. You're saying my father was murdered, not killed by wolves? I'm saying the wolves were the tool. Murder was the intent. I looked at her. Your father questioned his boundary markers. He was going to report discrepancies. 3 days later, wolves killed him. Same pattern as 8 others. All within 2 years, all after filing complaints with the land office. A rancher in the back stood. That's insane. You're saying someone trained wolves to kill on command? I'm saying it's possible. And there's evidence, physical evidence. We have photographs, we have the collars, we have the whistle signals. I paused. And we have a witness, a 7-year-old girl who heard Clayton Voss give the order. All eyes turned to Lily. She stood, small, pale, but her voice was steady. I heard him, she said. The night my parents died. He said, make it look like an accident. He said, the wolves will finish it by morning. I heard the whistle, 3 times, like the one Mr. Grey Wolf has. The crowd erupted again. Disbelief, horror, anger. Reverend Mills raised his hands. This is this is difficult to accept. It's difficult because it's true, I said. Because it means we've all been living a lie, building homes on stolen land, trusting a system that's rotten from the inside. I looked at them. And I know it's easier to call me crazy, easier to dismiss this as grief or desperation, but every man in this room who checked his deed knows I'm not lying. Hiram Burke stepped forward. If Marcus is lying, I'll call him out myself. But if he's telling the truth, and I believe he is, then we've got a bigger problem than one custody case. We've got a conspiracy that's killed at least 9 people. Maybe more. And if someone's training wolves to kill, another rancher said slowly, then every family in this valley is at risk. The room went silent. Rain hammered the roof. Thunder cracked close. A woman near the front started crying. I'd done it. Told the truth. Destroyed my reputation, my credibility, my standing in the community. But they were listening, finally. Ruth's son found it the next morning. He'd been clearing out his father's surveying equipment, preparing to sell it. Hadn't touched it in 3 years. The surveyor's chain. 60 feet of brass links, used for measuring property boundaries. Joshua Brennan's chain, the one he'd carried for 20 years. He brought it to my ranch at dawn. We spread it out in my barn. The smell of brass and old leather filled the space. Each link was marked, numbered, 1 through 60. Link number 7 was bent. Ruth knelt beside it, touched it with shaking hands. Joshua marked this, she said. He wrote in his journal, said it was bent during a confrontation at Section 14 with Clayton Voss. Voss tried to move a boundary stone. Joshua stopped him. They fought. The chain was damaged. She looked up. If we remeasure using a proper chain, the boundaries will prove the land office measurements are mathematically impossible. Grey Wolf examined it. This is proof, physical mathematical proof. Boundaries measured with a bent chain will always be wrong. If we can show the land office used faulty equipment, Sheriff Haynes rode up, dismounted fast. He was carrying something, a leather collar, brass tag, blood-stained. Found this at the Hendricks death site, he said, buried under rocks. Someone tried to hide it after the attack. He held up the tag. VR Valley Ranch. Same as the collars at the canyon. He set it on the workbench, pulled out another item, a whistle. 3 chambers, brass construction. Found this too. Same design as the training whistles at the canyon, same pitch. He looked at me. This was at the scene, Marcus, which means the wolves that killed Hendricks were wearing collars, were following commands. Lily walked into the barn. She'd been in the house with Ruth. Now she approached the workbench slowly, looked at the collar, at the whistle. She reached out, touched the brass tag. Papa had one like this, she whispered, the chain. He measured with it every day. He said Mr. Voss broke it on purpose. Bent link 7, then blamed the creek flooding for bad measurements. Grey Wolf picked up the whistle. If I blow this... Don't, the sheriff said. Not yet. We counted tracks at the canyon. 8 wolves accounted for, 4 still missing. You blow that whistle, you might call them here. Then we save it for court, Grey Wolf said. We bring this evidence to Judge Pike. The chain, the collar, the whistle, Lily's testimony, Ruth's maps, the photographs from the canyon. He looked at each of us. This is enough. This is what we need. I stood there looking at the evidence spread across my workbench. 20 years of lies, laid bare in brass and leather. When's the hearing? I asked. Monday, Grey Wolf said. 3 days. Pike's consolidated all claims. Federal courthouse, public hearing. Voss has to appear, has to answer for all of it. Thunder rolled across the valley. The storm was building. Spring rain mixed with the last of winter's ice. The barn roof drummed with water, outside, distant, barely audible over the rain, howling. 4 wolves, still out there, still conditioned, still dangerous. Grey Wolf tested the whistle, just held it to his lips, didn't blow, but his face went grim. Monday, he said again. We end this Monday. The territorial courthouse sat on Helena's main street. 3 stories of brick and timber, built to impress, to intimidate, the kind of place where laws were written and lives were decided. By 9 in the morning, every seat was filled. Standing room only along the back walls. People crowded the doorway. The whole valley had come. Some to see justice, some to see a spectacle, all of them hungry for answers. The room smelled like wet wool and nervous sweat, bodies packed too close, breath fogging in the cool morning air. Outside, spring rain hammered the windows. But inside, silence, waiting. Judge Warren Pike entered from his chambers. 70 years old, white beard, eyes that had seen every kind of lie a man could tell. He sat at the bench. The wood creaked under his weight. His gavel struck once. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "This hearing will determine 4 matters," he said, his voice carried to every corner. "First, custody of Lily Cartwright, minor child. Second, validity of contested land patents in Township 14. Third, whether criminal fraud charges should be filed regarding said patents. Fourth, investigation into alleged use of trained animals in multiple homicides." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Pike's gavel struck again. "All parties may present evidence. I will hear testimony from any credible witness, but I will tolerate no disruption, no outbursts, no theater." He looked directly at Clayton Voss. "Is that understood?" Voss sat at the defendant's table. Beside him, Silas Pruitt, the railroad attorney. Both men in fine suits, both faces calm, confident. "Yes, Your Honor," Voss said smoothly. "I sat at the plaintiff's table, Lily beside me, Ruth Brennan on my other side. Grey Wolf stood behind us, Sheriff Haynes near the door. Pike nodded to Grey Wolf. "Counselor, present your case." Grey Wolf stood, walked to the center of the room. The floorboards groaned under his boots. "Your Honor, I represent 3 parties, Marcus Thornhill, Ruth Brennan, and the Blackfoot Nation of Montana Territory. All 3 have been victims of systematic land fraud spanning 3 decades. He pulled out Ruth's maps, spread them on the evidence table. "These are original survey maps from drawn by Joshua Brennan in 1878, government surveyor, licensed and bonded." He laid out the current land office maps beside them. "These are current territorial records. Note the boundaries, they don't match. Hundreds of acres shifted, parcels that violate legal township geometry, land that appears and disappears on paper." Pike leaned forward, examined the maps. His finger traced those boundary lines. "Explain the discrepancy." "Fraud, Your Honor. Someone altered the official records, created false boundaries, issued patents on land that was already claimed or that didn't exist at all." Voss's attorney stood. "Objection. Maps can be redrawn for accuracy. Surveys are updated." "Not like this," Grey Wolf cut in. He pulled out the comparison documents. "These signatures, Preston Voss, Land Commissioner from 1875 to 1881. His signature appears on 17 death certificates, 43 land patents, and 62 boundary corrections, all dated across 6 years." He laid them out, row after row. "But they're identical, exact, same pressure, same loops, same flourish, mathematically impossible unless one man signed all these documents in one sitting, or," he paused, "unless someone forged them." The crowd erupted. Pike's gavel struck 3 times. "Order!" Ruth stood. Her hands shook as she pulled out Joshua's death certificate. "My husband found the discrepancies. He was going to report them. Then he died. Wolf attack, they said, but Joshua's horse never spooked. Not in 20 years. Her voice cracked. "Someone killed him, made it look natural, and I think that someone is sitting in this room." Pike looked at Voss. "Commissioner, response?" Voss stood, calm, composed. "Your Honor, I've served this territory faithfully for 12 years. My father before me for 20. If there are errors in the records, they're honest mistakes. Surveys are imperfect. Technology improves. Boundaries are updated to reflect reality." "And the deaths?" Pike asked. "Tragic, but natural. Wolves are dangerous, horses spook, men fall." Voss gestured to the crowd. "To suggest conspiracy, to suggest I'm somehow orchestrating animal attacks, is absurd. It's the desperate accusation of men who want to avoid their debts and a woman who can't accept her husband's accident." The crowd murmured, some nodding, some uncertain. Sheriff Haynes stood. "Your Honor, I have physical evidence." He carried a wooden crate to the evidence table, opened it. Inside, wolf collars, 12 of them, brass tags glinting, blood-stained leather. "Found these in a canyon, Section 22, along with feeding troughs, training equipment, and whistle marks carved into stone." He pulled out one collar, held up the tag. "VR Valley Ranch, Preston Voss's old property." Voss's face didn't change. "My father raised dogs. That was his kennel mark. Finding old collars proves nothing." "They're not old," the sheriff said. 3 of these have fresh blood, human blood, lab tested it, matches blood type of John Hendricks, killed 2 weeks ago, wolf attack, we said, but these collars tell a different story." Pike leaned back. "Bring in the field book." I stood, pulled Thomas Cartwright's surveyor notebook from my coat, walked it to the bench. The leather was still water-stained, still smelled like frozen canvas and death. Pike opened it, read silently. His expression hardened. Commissioner Voss approved Section 1422 patents despite survey measurements that exceed legal township boundaries by 847 acres, he read aloud. Impossible without fraud. Will report to territorial governor before March 15th deadline. Pike looked up. This is dated January 18th, 4 days before Thomas Cartwright died. The room went silent. Show the chain, Pike said. Ruth's son carried Joshua's surveyor chain to the center of the room, 60 feet of brass links. We stretched it across the floor, link 7 bent at a sharp angle. Ruth knelt beside it. This is the chain my husband used. Link 7 was bent during a confrontation with Clayton Voss. If you measure with a bent chain, every measurement is wrong, creates false boundaries. She pulled out a new chain, measured the courthouse room width, 22 feet, then she used the bent chain, 24 feet, 6 inches. 2.5 feet of error, she said. Over a township section, 640 acres, that's hundreds of acres of false land. Land that doesn't exist, land that was sold anyway. Pike stood. Take this outside. We moved to the street. The rain had stopped. Mud everywhere. The smell of wet earth and horse manure filled the air. In the middle of the street, a cage. 4 wolves inside, gray and lean, eyes yellow. They paced, nervous, dangerous. Gray Wolf pulled out the brass whistle, the one from the canyon. Your Honor, if these are wild animals, they won't respond to commands. But if they're trained... He blew 3 short bursts. The wolves stopped pacing, sat, all 4, immediately, like dogs obeying a master. The crowd gasped. Gray Wolf blew twice. The wolves laid down. 1 long blast. They stood, ears forward, waiting for the next command. Sweet Jesus, someone whispered. Pike's face was stone. Bring the child. Lily walked forward, small, pale, but her chin was up. She looked at the wolves, then at the crowd, then at Silas Pruitt. That's him, she said. Her voice was small but clear. That's the man who said, make it look like an accident. I heard his voice. By the wagon. He was talking to someone. He said, the wolves will finish it by morning. Then I heard the whistle, 3 times, like Mr. Gray Wolf just did. Pruitt stood. His face was ash white. She's mistaken. She's a child. Traumatized. I'm not mistaken. Lily's voice grew stronger. And you said something else. You said, Tom, I'm sorry. You called my papa by name. You knew him. Pruitt stumbled, sat down hard. Pike leaned forward. Mr. Pruitt, did you know Thomas Cartwright? Silence. Then Pruitt's shoulders sagged. We grew up together, he whispered. Best friends since we were 8 years old. I was at his wedding. I held his daughter when she was born. His voice broke. But the railroad, they needed that land, Section 18, right of way for the northern expansion. Tom was going to report the survey fraud. Would have stopped everything. Cost millions. So you killed him? Pike's voice was ice. I told them to stop him from filing the report. That's all. Just stop him. They said they'd use the wolves. Make it look natural. I didn't know. He looked at Lily. I didn't know his family would be with him. I swear I didn't know. The wagon was supposed to be empty. Just Tom, just papers. But when they told me a woman and child, he put his head in his hands. I've been living in hell for 3 weeks. Voss stood. Your Honor, this man's testimony is unreliable. He's clearly disturbed. The sheriff moved fast, grabbed Voss, searched him. In Voss's pocket, a brass whistle, same design, same 3 chambers. The crowd exploded, voices shouting, women crying, men surging forward. Pike's gavel struck, again. Order! The marshals moved in, handcuffs clicked. Clayton Voss, Pike said. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, land fraud, and use of trained animals as weapons in multiple homicides. Silas Pruitt, you're charged as accessory to murder. He looked at the crowd. This hearing will reconvene in 1 week to address land patent restitution. Until then, all contested deeds are suspended. The gavel struck one final time. 1 week later, the courthouse was packed again, but this time, the air felt different. Not tense, not afraid, just waiting. Judge Pike entered, sat. His gavel rested on the bench, unused. I've reviewed all evidence, he said. Testimony, documents, physical proof, and I've reached my decisions. The room held its breath. First, custody of Lily Cartwright. He looked at me, at Lily sitting beside me, her hand in mine. Marcus Thornhill has demonstrated moral courage, selfless care, and a willingness to sacrifice his own interests for truth. Lily Cartwright is hereby placed in his permanent custody. Adoption proceedings will be expedited. Lily's grip tightened on my hand. I heard her breath catch. Second, land patents. All deeds registered between 1875 and 1883 bearing Preston or Clayton Voss signatures are suspended pending independent resurvey. A federal surveyor will be appointed. Property rights will be determined based on accurate measurements, not fraudulent records. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Pike raised his hand for silence. For those holding good faith claims, those who purchase land honestly, I will work to protect your interests where possible. But understand, much of the land in this valley was stolen, from individuals, from the Blackfoot Nation. Justice requires restoration, even when restoration is painful. He looked at me. Marcus Thornhill, your ranch deed is invalid. However, I find that you purchased in good faith. You are entitled to 8,000 acres. The amount you can prove you legitimately acquired through cattle sales and labor improvements. The remaining 7,000 will revert to prior claimants. 8,000 acres. Half my empire, but honest acres. Real acres. I accept, I said. Pike nodded. Blackfoot treaty lands, 12,000 acres unlawfully claimed through survey fraud, are restored to tribal authority under the Treaty of 8-5. Samuel Gray Wolfe stood, nodded once, respectful. Third, criminal sentences. Clayton Voss, 20 years federal prison, 15 for land fraud, 5 additional for conspiracy to use animals as weapons and homicide. Silas Pruitt, 10 years federal prison for accessory to murder and conspiracy. Voss's face was stone. Pruitt wept. Fourth, the wolves. Pike looked at the federal wildlife agent sitting in the gallery. Agent Morrison, your recommendation? The agent stood, gray-haired, worn face. He smelled like pine and horses. The 8 wolves in custody exhibit trained behaviors. They've been conditioned for years. Can't be released near human settlements. Too dangerous. But they can be relocated. Yellowstone territory. Far from towns, far from ranches. Give them a chance to return to wild behaviors. And the 4 at large? Pike asked. We've been tracking them. 2 are young females. Never attacked humans, just fed in captivity. They can be rehabilitated. The other 2 are older males, more aggressive. We'll monitor. If they approach settlements, we'll have to put them down. But if they stay in high country... He paused. Even predators deserve a second chance if they're willing to take it. Pike nodded. So ordered. This case is closed. The gavel struck once. Final. The surveyor's chain ceremony took 3 days. The whole township came. Families camped along Section 14. Children played in the mud. Women cooked over open fires. Men helped hold the chain, measure the boundaries, witness the truth being literally reestablished. The smell of wood smoke and fresh coffee filled the valley. Spring grass was coming in green. Wildflowers, prairie smoke, and lupine dotted the hillsides. The air was warm, soft, the kind of warmth that makes you believe winter really is over. The federal surveyor was a thin man named Collins. He measured with precision, called out numbers in a clear voice. Every 100 yards, a witness signed the log, confirming the measurements, making it official. We worked from sunrise to sunset. The brass chain glinted in the sun. The sound of it, links sliding against each other, measuring true, was like music. On the 3rd day, we reached Section 14, Marker Stone 12, the place where Thomas and Rebecca Cartwright had died, where Lily had survived 3 days in the cold. 2 wooden crosses stood there now, simple, clean, names carved deep. Lily walked forward. She was carrying something Ruth had made for her, a wooden horse, small, carved from pine, smooth and perfect. She knelt, placed it on her mother's grave. The wood was warm from her hands. "Mama," she whispered. "Papa, I'm safe now. I have a home. I have a father who chose me that She touched the crosses. "And everyone knows what you died for. The truth. It's all true now." I stood beside her, put my hand on her shoulder. Marcus Thornhill's grave was 2 hills over, Martha and James. I'd visit them later, tell them about Lily, about truth, about starting over on honest ground. The federal agent approached. He was leading 2 wolves on long ropes, young females, the rehabilitated ones. He'd brought them here deliberately. For this, he knelt, removed their collars. The leather fell away. The wolves stood there, uncertain, free but not sure what freedom meant. The agent stepped back. "Go on," he said quietly. "You're wild now. Go be what you were meant to be." One wolf looked at him, then at the hills, then she ran. Her companion followed. They disappeared into the pine forest, heading for high country, for mountains where wolves belonged. That evening, the township gathered for a celebration. Tables set up in the meadow, food and drink, fiddle music, children dancing, the smell of roasted meat and fresh bread. Hiram Burke found me, shook my hand. You could have stayed quiet, kept your empire, but you chose right over rich. I chose truth, I said. Truth and her. I nodded toward Lily. She was playing with other children, laughing. The sound was pure. As the sun set, painting the valley gold and purple, I heard it. From the distant mountains, clear and wild, howling, not threatening, not conditioned, just wolves, being wolves. Lily heard it too. She came to stand beside me, slipped her hand into mine. They're free now, Papa, she said. Just like us. I looked down at her, at this child who'd survived winter and wolves and men's greed, who'd helped tear down an empire of lies. Yeah, I said, just like us. The wolves howled again. The sound echoed across the valley. Natural, honest, wild. And I realized that's what freedom sounds like. Now, I reckon you're wondering if an old man ever forgets the winter he went from millionaire to honest dirt farmer. The winter wolves became weapons and land became lies. Truth is, I don't forget. I just see it different now. That spring when we rechained the valley, I watched 7,000 acres get measured away, land I'd sweated over, bled for, built on. Some men would have drunk themselves to death, but I'll tell you what I gained. A daughter who calls me Papa. Sleep that ain't haunted by wondering if my fortune came from another man's grave. A community that respects me for what I chose, not what I owned. You can build an empire on lies and die wealthy, or you can tear it down for truth and die whole. I chose whole. And those wolves, they taught me something. Evil ain't in the animal. Evil's in the man who corrupts nature for profit. A wolf kills to survive. That's honest. A man who trains a wolf to murder. That's the devil's work. Your grandmother grew up knowing her father died for honesty, and her second father lived for it. She learned that even predators deserve mercy when they're just doing what they were forced to do. Nowadays, when I sit on this porch with you on my knee, little Martha, named for the wife I lost, I watch the meadowlarks return every April. And on cold evenings, we hear wolves from the high country. They don't scare you. You know they're just animals doing what God made them to do. The surveyor's chain hangs in my office, bent link still there, and beside it, one of those wolf collars the sheriff found. I keep them both to remember. One crooked measure can corrupt a whole valley. One man corrupting nature can terrorize a territory. But one man choosing truth, even when it costs everything, can set both land and beast free. Some springs, when the wind's right, I hear brass links ringing, measuring true, and wolves howling from mountains where they belong. Both sounds mean the same thing now, freedom.